Oh, I'll just bet 6.5 if I speak quickly.
Order. Order.
Mr. Speaker.
Todd McClay.
Mr. Speaker, I begin my maiden speech today by offering congratulations on your election as Speaker of this great institution. I also congratulate my new colleague, the Deputy Speaker, Lindsay Tisch, and Assistant Speakers, Eric Roy and Rick Barker. I want to pay tribute to our Prime Minister, John Key, in the way that he has led this country since the election on November the 8th. Many people in my electorate of Rotorua have told me that this is the type of leadership that they voted for and that the change that they want. I also want to pay a glowing tribute to the National Party President, Judy Kirk. Judy is an exceptional person, and many of us were helped to be here today by her hard work and dedication. I'd like to praise the CNI Chair of the National Party, Joe Stewart, and thank her for standing on the side of the road with me, waving placards during our campaign. In the streets of London, as on the sports fields of Munster, New Zealand has a reputation for award for hard work. I want to thank my campaign team for their hard work over the past year. My electorate chairman, Ian Patchell, who is here today, my campaign chairman, Councillor Mike McVicker, and my finance agent, Don McFarland. To Ian McClay for his great wisdom and guidance, and for the many others who are responsible for our success in Rotorua this year. I also want to acknowledge the people who have travelled from Rotorua to be here today, and to thank Neil for the unfettered access to his fridge during the campaign. I want to make special mention of a very special person, my father-in-law, Ron Wattam. Now, Ron and my mother-in-law, Margaret, live in Cromwell, and they came to stay with us in Rotorua for a week about 6 months ago, and they're still there. Ron worked from early in the morning until late at evening, removing great moustaches from my hoardings. Can I say to the Prime Minister that the people of Whakarewarewa believe I look better with a moustache than he does? Mr. Speaker, I can report that the bakeries and other electorates should not bother entering the national pie contest next year, because I can vouch for the pies made in Makatu. I know this for a fact because I consumed nearly 500 of them during my campaign this year. I would like to pay tribute to the Honourable Steve Chadwick across the House, a worthy opponent who dealt with the issues on the campaign trail and fought a clean campaign. Mrs. Chadwick has great affection for Rotorua, and I'm grateful that she has offered to work together over the next 3 years to advance the interests of the people of Rotorua, and I accept this offer. Mr. Speaker, if I had forgotten it, I was certainly reminded during this year's campaign. My family is the most important thing to me in this world. My ambition as a Member of Parliament, the things that I want to do for my community, the reason that I want more violent criminals and drug dealers locked away for longer is because of an overwhelming desire to protect and offer my family opportunity. On the issues of conscience in this House, I will be guided by what I want for my 4 small children, and whether they will grow up to be proud of their father based upon his decisions and how he has voted. My wife Nadine and I have been blessed with 4 outstanding children: Joshua, who's 10, Samuel, who's 8, Kaylin, who's 6, and my daughter, the perfect one, Anakera, who's 4. Joshua, Sam, and Kaylin attend Linmore School in Rotorua and have told me how excited they are to see their dad on TV today. And I must for a moment speak of the great love and understanding of a truly exceptional and long-suffering woman, and that's my wife, Nadine. Nadine and I have been married for 14 years this year, and the last 14 years have been a joy, well, at least for me. And never could I have imagined that I might compliment somebody so well. Without Nadine's support, her understanding and perseverance as a wife and as a mother, then my life would have been much more ordinary. It's important to remember one's origins. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to say to this House that I was born in Rotorua, as was my mother before me, and I am the son of a school principal with a lifelong commitment to improving children's lives. Now, when I was born, my parents lived in Reparoa, and my father drove a school bus each morning before teaching children how to read and write. This school bus in Reparoa is no longer driven by a teacher, and sadly, early next year, may no longer be based in the district, and this is not right. I want to thank my parents, Roger and Dawn, for sharing this day with me. I had a great childhood, and against frequent demands for retribution from my siblings, do not ever remember my father raising his hand against me in anger. My two brothers, Tim and Stephen, are extremely hardworking, successful New Zealanders. They're good fathers and they are great brothers. I grew up in Taupo and attended Tauhara College and Wesley College in Pukekohe. I'm sure that the Honourable Minister Paula Bennett would agree that my school in Taupo was better than her school in Taupo. In my younger years, I had many jobs. I cleaned cars, I cut firewood in the bush, I worked for Carter Holt in their sawmill. But mainly, I was like many young New Zealanders. I loved fishing and I enjoyed hunting, and I played rugby with a passion. I had little interest in politics, and I'm not sure that education was as important to me as it should have been. My journey to this chamber, as with many of us, was not without detours. I've spent much of my adult life outside of New Zealand. I've worked in one of the world's largest bureaucracies in and around the European institutions in Belgium. At that time, few, if any, New Zealander had worked in the European Parliament politically. As a result, I am no fan of bureaucracy. And to quote a former president of the EC, Jacques Delors, I firmly believe that governments should do less, but what they do, they must do better. I've owned a business where on a daily basis we balance the demands of finding and keeping good staff with the need to remain competitive and productive. I have great sympathy for every New Zealander who will fight to survive in the coming months and years as the world's economy struggles to change. I do not subscribe to the view that employers are bad people, yet I accept that employees must be afforded rights. I have experience of diplomacy. In 2000, I travelled to Cotonou and Benin to attend the signing of a development and trade agreement between Europe and the countries of Africa, the Caribbean, and the Pacific Islands. There I met the Foreign Minister of the Cook Islands and the Premier of Niue. Over months, these two countries decided to establish diplomatic representation in the EU in Brussels. I was honoured to be asked to represent these two beautiful countries as their ambassador to Europe. Mr. Speaker, I declare an interest. In 2005, I was awarded honorary Cook Island nationality by the government and people of the Cook Islands. I'm proud to stand here today and say to the people of New Zealand that I am a Cook Islander, and I send greetings to my friends in Rarotonga. Kia orana. After many years in Europe, my wife and I were faced with an important decision, a decision that would decide the very people that our children would grow to become. Our choice was between a life different from that of our childhood or to embrace the very things that make New Zealanders unique. It was not a choice between a life in Brussels where it always rains or a life in Wellington where it never does. Mr. Speaker, during my campaign, I met a man in Rotorua whilst door knocking who wanted to talk to me about how to keep young people out of trouble, and I was impressed by this man. He had been a gang member for much of his life. He had served time in prison. He said that he had never voted because he just didn't care. And when he last came out of prison, he decided to change. He wanted to change because of love for his family, and he wanted a different life for his children. He left the gang, he got a job, he now works with the community. His children will have a brighter future. And in future, when I am faced with decisions that affect New Zealanders, I will think of this man. I want for a moment to reflect upon the country that we live in. Many years ago, New Zealand society was based upon the structure of the family. Neighbours knew each other and they liked each other. Rural communities were strong and perhaps life was simpler. When a school needed a new swimming pool, and schools used to have swimming pools, or a small community needed a hall, funds were raised to buy timber and cement, and people came together to build these things. Today, funds are raised for resource consent and for development levies, and many of our children no longer know how to catch a fish and to climb a tree. The Rotorua Electorate is an exceptional place and is reflective of much of New Zealand, from our beautiful lakes, and we have many in Rotorua, to Mount Tarawera and Nongataha, to the trees of the central North Island. Indeed, Nick Smith and I were known to hug such trees during the early part of our campaign this year on the foreshore of Lake Tikitapu. We have great beaches in Makatu and Pokehina and some of the best saltwater and freshwater fishing in this country. My electorate is truly a place of vast opportunity. We are rich in culture, and Maoridom is strong in this region. I believe Maori culture to be my culture because I was born in this country. Kawerau and Murupara communities where the people are proud and where they have achieved together. Now, Kawerau is the smallest council district in New Zealand, and we should learn from their commitment and emulate their successes in other parts of this land. Mr. Speaker, I lay claim to the following claims on behalf of the people of the Rotorua Electorate. Rotorua is the tourism capital of New Zealand. Next year, the Bay of Plenty will celebrate the upgrading of the Rotorua Airport to international standard. This airport will be a gateway to the Bay and will provide benefit to the many towns and cities in our region. Visitors come to Rotorua expecting the very best service. They want memorable and unique experiences, and they want to eat and drink and go shopping. In parts of our country, this is possible, but over Easter and Rotorua, it is not. If we are serious about tourism in this country, if we are to embrace the benefits of increased visitor numbers, then we need to change. The message that we send from this tourism capital is don't come to Rotorua over Easter, it's closed. If we need to change this message to fully embrace this future. The Rotorua Electorate is also the forestry capital of New Zealand. Engineering, trucking and transport, innovation all play a vital role in our local economy. I believe that forestry has importance to our future. The way we meet our international environmental commitments is to plant more trees and then to process these trees in this country, to add value to them here. We must send a clear signal to the forestry industry that as a parliament we offer support. I am fully committed to working with the forestry sector and all those whose livelihoods are dependent upon it for the future of my electorate. Mr. Speaker, following boundary changes, my electorate is also the kiwi fruit capital of New Zealand. Our kiwi fruit are impressive, they're large, they're sought after by international markets, and some of them are even shaved. The kiwi fruit sector, like others, has suffered over recent years, but the development of infrastructure in the Bay of Plenty and an unrelenting focus on productivity will help the kiwi fruit farmers of Te Matai Road. I will work closely with them to ensure that their industry is managed as they wish it to be. Mr. Speaker, during her maiden speech yesterday, my colleague Melissa Lee spoke of the horrific death of little Nia Glassy in Rotorua. It would be easier to speak only of the good things about my home and to ignore the problems as if they hadn't happened. But this is not my way. It concerns me that the very people who should love and cherish our young the most, Nia's parents and grandparents, treated her life so cheaply. The action of those found to be responsible for Nia's death is evil, and I know no other way to describe it. Justice for Nia Glassy will only be done when horrific child abuse in all parts of New Zealand stops. Today, I challenge all communities of New Zealand to care more for our children. It is a privilege to be a parent, it is not a right. It will take more than reports and inquiries to stop this cycle of violence. Child abusers do not read our reports. It will take consequence and personal responsibility. It will take each of us as a community to stand up and say violence of any type is not acceptable. Now, 2 weeks ago, I met a small boy who attends Te Marakau School on the edge of my electorate in the Eastern Bay. He asked me what my job was, and I explained that the job of an MP was to represent, to be a loud, clear voice on behalf of the people of his electorate. I also said that more than anything, I believe the job of a Member of Parliament is to listen, not just to talk. And quoting a Greek philosopher said that this should be easy as I have 2 ears and only 1 mouth. I will be able to listen twice as much as I talk. Now, this small boy was studied. He looked at me and he said, "Sir, I think you will be a great MP. I can see 2 of your ears." Mr. Speaker, to be a member of this House is a privilege, and I pledge to remember this each and every day that I am here. It is an opportunity to work hard to help others and to make New Zealand and my home, Rotorua, better. The day that I forget this privilege will be the day that it is time for me to leave this place. Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the House.